Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Criterion, and in this edition we look at the 1970 British film Performance, starring Mick Jagger and James Fox. Mick Jagger in the 1960s had rose to meteoric fame as the lead singer of one of Britain's foremost rock bands, the Rolling Stones. His reputation for a hedonistic lifestyle made him a good fit with his first foray into acting in cinema, in Performance. This was the brainchild of Donald Cammell. His working title was The Performers, and it was intended to be a light-hearted swinging 60s romp. Now, at one stage, Marlon Brando, a friend of Cammell, was in the frame to be cast as Chaz the Gangster. But of course, the role went instead to British actor James Fox. Now, he had been seen in quite a few British films in the 1960s where he had been noticed, namely The Servant by Joseph Losey. The screenplay to the film had also morphed into a much darker experimental film, including graphic depictions of violence, sex, and drug use. Nicolas Roeg had also come on board as a collaborator with Cammell. Now, it was the intention that the Rolling Stones would in fact provide the soundtrack, but this never happened. Instead, Mick Jagger ended up being cast as Turner, the central protagonist in his first on-screen appearance. The film has become a cult classic. Jagger plays the washed-up rock star Turner, living in a ménage à trois with Ferber, played in the film by Anita Pallenberg, and Lucy, played by Michel Breton. The film transforms itself into an hallucinatory end-of-the-60s trip that, with its exploration of identity and sexual fluidity, seems incredibly prescient several decades on. Performance is a bizarre, disconnected attempt to link the inhabitants of two kinds of London. The London underworlds, in fact, pop stars and gangsters. Now, it does have a kind of frantic energy to it, and it introduced Mick Jagger in a role that reinforced his stage image without copying it. The movie is really about images anyway. On its most fundamental plot level, it's about a gangster, Chaz, James Fox, who's trying to disguise himself so he can slip out of England on a forged passport. Now, he meets the Jagger character, that's Turner, by accident when he takes a basement room in a boarding house. Jagger is introduced as a top star of 2 or 3 years ago, who has retired and is hidden away to work on his memoirs or something. Now, mostly he seems to have submerged himself in a hedonistic existence with 2 girls, a variety of drugs, and a cloying assortment of Eastern artefacts. Almost every shot in his apartment is aimed past candles, incense, wall hangings, tapestries, and half the time we're even getting the Turkish rug reflected in the mirror. Now, this is not exactly the environment that your everyday white-collar gangster would feel at home in. But Chaz, well, he's a strange character who never feels at home anywhere. His workaday style is to beat and threaten potential protection customers. But despite his enthusiasm for his work, he isn't really accepted, even by his boss. You see, every gangster has to have a boss, and his associates, of course. So Jagger's little corner of London seems much like any other to him, affording a hideout until he can get the passport and fly to New York. But alas, Turner doesn't see it that way, and over the course of a day or two, the gangster is sucked down into a psychedelic whirlpool with Turner and the 2 girls. Now, one of them feeds him an hallucinogenic mushroom, after which the other dresses him in the unisex clothes they all wear And then, of course, we get a lot of obligatory psychedelic photography. Clearly, Roeg's influence here, showing the poor guy losing his identity and his values, or in any event, his inclination to escape. Making his film debut, Rolling Stones frontman Mick Jagger may have frustrated Warner Brothers stockholders by making his official entrance into the film at the 45-minute mark. But it's kind of delayed unveiling that bestows gravitas and narrative heft on a character before they utter a single word. Playing a man of mystery, Mick Jagger gets to let his rock star mystique do most of the talking here, bringing both erotic danger and a sort of touching melancholy to his role. Now, I'm not sure if he's very good or very well used in the film, but his performance as Turner is perfection. Actor James Fox is no stranger to identity crisis dramas either. As I said earlier, he first gained notoriety for The Servant from 1963. This was another film about mind games and power plays carried out in a sexually cryptic arena. And also, of course, 1967, he featured in Thoroughly Modern Millie, a completely different role for him. I felt Fox radiates an appealingly ambiguous is he gay or is he just British vibe that is put to good use in performance. His finishing school take on an East End Cockney thug is as frightening as it is canny. Performance is set in the waning days of the swinging 60s in London, about 1968, albeit a shadowy, considerably seamier London town than one might associate with Twiggy or even Austin Powers. Now, performance was completed in 1968, but distributing studio Warner Brothers were so appalled by the results that they saw that they shelved the film until 1970. But where performance truly excels is in capturing the era's fascination with psychedelics and inner exploration. The 1950s, with its emphasis on conformity and rigidly defined gender roles, was the decade that professed to know all the answers. But in direct contrast, the late 1960s was all about questions. And in the late 1970s and 1980s, performance gradually acquired a cult following on the late night and repertory cinema circuits. By the 1990s, it had undergone a critical reappraisal. The film has become canonised as well by many theorists of British cinema, who have suggested it's iconic within the British gangster genre. Now, this, of course, is primarily due to its reflection of the coexistence of the criminal world of the East End and the bohemian culture in London during the 1960s and 1970s. Now, the main soundtrack album was released by Warner Brothers in September of 1970. It features Jagger, Ry Cooder, Randy Newman, The Last Poets, Buffy St. Marie, and Mary Clayton. Now, the cast of the film consists of James Fox as Chaz, Mick Jagger as Turner, Anita Pallenberg as Ferber, Michelle Breton as Lucy, and of course Stanley Meadows is Rosebloom, and Sydney as Dana, and John Bindon as Moody. Of course, I would be remiss to note that performance does have something of a place in cinema history. It's the memo from Turner scene that would inspire the development of music videos well into the 1980s. And furthermore, the obviously queer gangsters that Chaz starts out on the same side of appear to have been directly inspired by the Cray Brothers organisation. The Firm, as it was called. John Bindon, who plays one of the gangsters, was rumoured to have actually been an associate of the Cray Brothers. And furthermore, performance can be seen as having influenced subsequent British gangster films, most notably contemporary director Guy Ritchie. Now, the film comes new to the collection on a 4K UHD combo with the 4K and a new 4K digital restoration of the film. Now, this has been sourced from the 35mm original camera negative, always good, with some sections necessitating the use of a 35mm internegative. 2 Technicolor prints held by the BFI were used for colour reference, and the restoration was approved by the producer Sandy Lieberson, and it's presented with Dolby Vision HDR. The film is very stylised and gritty, and thankfully there has been no digital manipulation to obliterate the natural look of the film. And for those of you who have come to 4K strictly for a sleek and clean picture, well, you should probably adjust your expectations here. The level of detail and clarity is certainly a pleasing experience, with all of the natural film grain intact, and the grain resolves impeccably with only some minor fluctuations due to the original photography. The texture on display in the dingy apartments and within the outfits is a revelation. Even the makeup worn by some of the characters presents with impressive clarity. The sound, of course, is plainer. It's uncompressed mono, and an original UK version soundtrack is also there, and it's all presented in Dolby Vision HDR with a separate Blu-ray with the film and these special features. Donald Cammell, The Ultimate Performance from 1998. That's a documentary by Kevin MacDonald and Chris Rodley. Influence and Controversy, Making Performance from 2007. A new visual essay about David Litvinoff, the film's dialogue coach and its technical advisor. Interviews with the actors. A programme on the overdubbing done for the US version of the film. Memo from Turner that features on-set footage. There's a trailer, and of course, as usual, on a expanded booklet, an essay by film critic Ryan Gilby and a 1995 article by scholar Peter Wallen. And the cover art for Performance is designed by Fred Davis. Performance comes to the Criterion collection with a running time of 105 minutes, and it's in a 1:8:5:1 aspect ratio, and it comes to the collection as a 4K UHD Blu-ray combo on Tuesday the 25th of February as Spine 1252. Next time on Let's Talk Criterion, we'll be welcoming a new 4K UHD restoration of one of Guillermo del Toro's trilogy of films, Kronos, coming to the collection very soon. So until then, from me, as always, it's goodbye, and above all, good Criterion viewing.